Muchas gracias a todos por estar aquí. Estamos felices de comenzar un nuevo ciclo New York Jazz All Stars 2017. Y este año, como todos sabemos, y todos tal vez, espero que no, pero creo que todos de alguna manera padecemos las circunstancias raras de la economía y la política. Queremos pedirles o queremos decirles que necesitamos su ayuda más que nunca para que esto pueda seguir adelante. Así que cualquier ayuda que nos puedan dar promocionando estos conciertos, por supuesto viniendo no solo a las clases, sino a los conciertos, lo cual es una clase en sí mismo, porque no solo con los maestros que están hoy, que estoy seguro ya los conocen, pero con todos los que vienen, que como cuando ellos eran jóvenes no eran tan conocidos, seguramente hay mucho que aprender en las clases, en los conciertos y en el taller avanzado para ejecutantes de jazz que continúa este año en su segunda edición. Queremos, como siempre, agradecer al Centro Cultural Roberto Cantoral por recibirnos de la mejor manera en este magnífico lugar y a las instituciones y empresas que nos ayudan a realizar este ciclo, que son Fomento Educacional, Asociación Civil, que promueve el intercambio educativo entre Estados Unidos y México desde hace más de 40 años, a Coca-Cola de México y al Centro Nacional de las Artes, con su ayuda infinita para llevar a cabo el centro, el taller avanzado para ejecutantes de jazz, las traducciones de estos talleres y todo aquello en lo que ellos nos apoyan. También a la Escuela Superior de Música, que nos ha ayudado y apoyado en el taller para ejecutantes de jazz, así que esperamos verlos a todos en el concierto. No se olviden de llenar el formulario que creo que les dan a todos, y pues aquí nos vemos hoy y en los próximos conciertos. Los dejo en la mejor compañía de este magnífico quinteto de Cookers. Muchas gracias.
Hello, everyone. Hi. Thanks for coming out, and thanks for having us. So, this band is called The Cookers, and this is Billy Harper on tenor saxophone. Cecil McBee on the bass. Grissett at the piano. And Billy Hart on the drums. So this band has actually been together for almost 10 years now. The basis of the idea to have the band came from a record made by Lee Morgan and Freddie Hubbard called Night of the Cookers. And we played in New York for a club owner who asked us to put together a tribute to the Night of the Cookers concert. And for that concert, we had a lot of the musicians associated with the record, like James Spalding and Pete LaRocca. And that's actually long ago, like 14 years or so by now. And we kept the idea going, and we played some concerts, and like a lot of things that happen with groups, you make a change here and there, somebody else comes in. We decided we wanted to play more original music. We focused on the music in the band more. And then 10 years ago, we all came together and decided this was the group, and for the last 10 years we've been touring and recording. The band is actually a 7-piece band, but we couldn't travel with everybody this time. And we've made 5 CDs so far, and like I said, we've been touring the world for the last 10 years or so. All these guys are, to me at least, established masters on their instruments and in this jazz idiom. Billy Harper started, did you start with Blakey? Started playing with Art Blakey, the Jazz Messengers. He also was in Max Roach's band and Lee Morgan's band, amongst many others. And Billy Hart has played with everyone. He was original member of Herbie Hancock's El Medici band. He's also played with every soul singer and funk artist in the 60s. Played with Jimmy Smith in the 60s. And then after that, basically anybody who's been playing out here. Charles Lloyd, Freddie Hubbard, I can go on and on. Cecil McBee, one of his first groups of prominence was playing in Charles Lloyd's original band with Keith Jarrett and Jack DeJohnette. And since then also has played with pretty much everyone. I met him when we were playing together with Charles Tolliver. And he's played, he's on, is that your first record, Dick? First band. Oh, he's also played with Jackie McLean. Well, Roy Haynes is on that record, Elvin Jones. He's played with every great drummer ever, essentially. Me and Danny are the kids. Danny is here playing for George Cables, but he's played in the band often. George Cables has an injury and can't fly. And Danny's been filling in for him a lot over the last year. I first met Danny in LA, I guess on something that was supposed to be a Freddie Hubbard gig or something featuring Freddie Hubbard. But over the last years, he's played with Tom Harrell extensively and Nicholas Payton. I got my start, I guess, basically working with Freddie Hubbard. And I've also worked with these guys in Charles Tolliver's band. And I can't even remember anymore. So that's basically the history of the band. So are you guys all musicians, or most of you musicians? Some of you musicians? So given this extensive history these guys have, I mean, maybe you're curious about certain musicians or certain approaches. So what we usually do is, like, if you guys have some questions, we'll start trying to help you out. Anybody? Not yet? Oh, come on, one. What was it like playing with? Hey, how you doing? Sorry, with who?
Ve al micrófono.
Who said that? Oh yeah, okay. So what do you want to know? Speak louder so that...
Like your general musical experience working with him?
Well, Wes Montgomery, of course, was a major innovator. You know, innovator, you know what I mean by innovator. He played the instrument in a way that no one else had played it before. Wes also was a great leader for me because he had 7 children. And I was the youngest member of the band, so he treated me like I was one of his children. So it was a great lesson for me, you know. He taught me many, many things. The first thing he said, Billy, I like you. He said, you're gonna be a great husband for some woman one day.
What did he mean?
No, he just knew that I was really dedicated to playing the music in his band, and so and I seemed to be at the time very disciplined. I used to practice a lot, so he liked that. But he also had an idea of how the drums were supposed to sound, and he gave me some good ideas of what he thought the role of the drummer was in terms of being a great interpreter of the music and keeping time. Do you understand what I mean by keeping time?
Yes.
There's a lot of different
I think so.
a lot of different concepts of how a drummer should keep time, and I adhered to Weiss's concept. I liked the way he taught me.
Can you talk a bit more about those concepts?
I knew you were going to say that. Well, there's a concept of playing time where where the rest of the drum set is subservient to the bass drum. That the bass drum is the major timekeeper. For other drummers that are here, they've heard the term before. It's called feathering the bass drum. Any drummers here? So you understand, you've heard that term before. Feathering the bass drum. That means keeping time for the bass drum. It's traditional that people should feel like dancing every time you play the drums. And that comes from the original way of playing the drums, where the bass drum is the leader. So that was one thing he taught me. And that the cymbals would follow the bass drum, and the rest of the drum kit would follow the bass drum. Is that a good enough answer?
Yes, thank you.
Okay.
Anybody else? You did so good with him. Somebody else before.
Hi,
Hey, what do you got?
yeah. This is for really the bass player.
Cecil.
How many years have you been playing drums with a bass like the one you have at your left?
Been a long time.
Okay. That long time, what you need the drum and the bass to know that like you can be playing with guys like you have in the band. What you know about your instrument and the techniques.
Are you a bass player?
Excuse me?
Are you a bass player?
No, both. I know, I play drums.
You want me to give you some ideas about the technique of playing the bass?
Well, you need technique to know how to play the bass.
I see. I see.
Harmony, all those things. But you are from Africa, right? So you know all the rhythms from Africa. That's what you have to know to get together in the group, right?
I don't know all the rhythms, if that's what you said. I have, excuse me, reasonable, how do you say, presentation, perhaps control, given certain things that are required, certain techniques that are necessary, which, quite frankly, basically, I developed myself. Originally, originally, I was a clarinet player. My first instrument was a clarinet that I played throughout middle school, high school, and college. And so the point is, as a clarinetist who discovered the instrument in my middle school, in my high school, the clarinet, the technique of the clarinet rhythmically had a lot to do with my approach to the instrument, which it is said throughout my career that I'm rather melodic,
Yeah.
given my various things, even during my so-called accompanying episodes or supportive. But quite frankly, I am one who never really studied the instrument. As I said, when in college, I studied the clarinet as it was required because I was there on a scholarship, and also my parents wanted me to flourish on that. So, but while in school, I became attracted to the instrument because of association with fellow musicians who play jazz. So in performing with them, gradually, these were guys that were more experienced, were older than me. I began to develop an understanding harmonically of how to approach the instrument. And further, I would develop my own techniques of approaching the instrument harmonically now that I'm studying theory and harmony and music to be a teacher. So my point is, as a clarinetist, having approached the string bass, I am more melodic, and which says that when I first entered New York, my bass lines, that is, the responsibility of a bass player, his primary responsibility is to play a quarter note the right way, the beat. 1, 2, 3, 4. You're supposed to play that. It's the heartbeat of the band. It keeps everybody, how do you say, centered. When I first arrived in New York City, I developed a rare reputation of being somebody that was not so comfortable with playing that quarter note because I was very melodic. So to this day, I feel that my concept insofar as a bassist who accompanies folks that are doing other things here, as a pretty decent composer and one who was very adept at harmony when I left school. I've created my own thing, and so forth is what I do on the stage. If anybody really inspired me, it was, you probably heard of Ray Brown, Paul Chambers, and Richard Davis. Ray Brown, Paul Chambers centered me in that I like to move around and maybe stay away from that quarter note, or Ray Brown and Paul Chambers, my memory and my experience, my appreciation of their techniques, I would stay more centered and not try to be melodic as a younger guy as I approached the bass upon first arriving in New York City. But when I heard Richard Davis, then I became melodic again. I couldn't play a quarter note to save my life. But in other words, as someone who was not taught legitimately, I taught myself not only to play the bass, I developed my own technique, and I taught myself theory and harmony, having studied to be a teacher in schools. I took that information and applied it to the instrument, and that's what I do. Perhaps tonight you'll hear none of what I'm saying. I'll do my best. Thank you.
Yeah, but what I'm trying to say is that the rhythms that you play in the drums, because the drums are percussions, see? And percussions with bass, you produce the lines of jazz, not like salsa or bossa nova. It's different. What is the jazz you are talking about? Drums and bass.
Well, I think what you're talking about, I mean, the music, the swing feel and things like that might be different, but the approach is similar. In salsa, you know, the bass has a grounding to it, but instead of one drummer, you have, you know, timbales, you have congas, you have bongo, you know, and you have, I don't know the names. You have three percussion players doing what in jazz one guy does, but I think the approach is the same. I meant to ask Cecil this, do you change your approach a little bit depending on the drummer you're playing with? You know, there's a wide variety.
Yes, absolutely. And I changed my technique, you might know, and so forth, my support of you guys up front, given the individual.
So, I mean, in jazz, there may be a little more freedom. I mean, salsa has a lot of freedom within a more regimented beat, maybe. And when a bass player is very grounded, when he's talking about that da, 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 it gives him the freedom to play off of that. And I think maybe, and he's also listening to the soloist, to what the soloist does, and play off that. There's a lot of, you know, communication going on. I've played in a lot of salsa bands, and there's a lot of similarities. It's, you know, it's a different rhythm perhaps, but when I solo, the drummers listen to me, and you know, and they build, and it's the same kind of simpatico thing, I think, between all the instruments. It just maybe jazz has a little more freedom to it. It has more room to go somewhere. But it's really about everybody playing together. If he lays down a steady beat, it gives him the freedom to go places, and you know, it depends on the song, it depends on the soloist. You know, we're all listening to each other all the time. And of course, we've been playing together a long time. We also know each other very well. We know, I think, in a way, they're like relationships. The more you know somebody, the more you trust them to be there for you when you take a chance. And if you fall on your face, you know they're going to be there, still giving you the beat, still driving you. And that's what I think makes groups special, when they play together a long time, that they know each other and they can feel each other, and I think it gives you a chance to take more risks or something. Because like I said, you know what they can do and you know what they're capable of, and I think they know when you're taking a chance and messing up, and they can get you back to where it is if they're being nice. So.
Thank you. Roberto.
De nada.
Hi, good afternoon. My name is Pavel, and I want to talk to you and make a question. These guys, all of these guys, are the first youth big band in Mexico. And I'd like to know if you can recommend something for them, because they are starting in this language, talking about jazz.
Okay, wait. The first what big band? I missed the word.
It's the first youth big band.
Youth.
Just, No de judíos, ¿sí? Quisiéramos, pero...
Well,
Yeah, I think that, let's see, one of the main things to learn, I suppose, about playing in a big band is that it's very specific about each section being able to breathe together or play together. So, it's not, well, even when you have a very small group and it's a really good group, people breathe together and play together also. So, really important to know when to start the note. The leader of your section, well, I mean, he's a leader, so you try to play with him, start with him, breathe with him is what I mean. Downbeat, and when to stop the note. So it's very important to, I mean, if you want to have a really good band, right? Breathing together, starting the note and stopping the note, both are very important in big band. And in any band, but certainly in a big band. How you phrase your line is definitely important. I know that most youth beginners groups maybe understand, maybe I think sometimes they're told in order to swing, you play but that's not really, that's not the real swing, you know. I mean, it gets you out of being rigid. But once you understand the feeling of swing, then you can play the notes more straight and they will swing. Because the drummer's going to be swinging and the rhythm section is going to make things swing anyway. So if you play that swings. It's not. See, you know what I mean? It's a little different. But the other one is going to swing. The straight kind of sound that I gave you swings anyway when the rhythm section is playing with you. So I'm not saying be rigidly straight. Da 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 da. I don't mean like that, but more like smooth legato straight or something like that. You know. You know what I mean?
Does that have to maybe have to do more with the accent of the notes and the articulation than the actual duration of the notes?
Yeah, definitely.
There are three very seriously important principles insofar as phrasing is concerned and accenting is concerned. First of all, you have to consider what legato is. Legato is the smoothest tone you can provide. That is, the tone must have a quality beginning like ta, or either da or la, given the quality of thought on paper. Legato, the note must stay even and even blend into the next note, or either blend into the next silence. It must be long, like 1, 2, long. Okay? The next is if the note or the phrase is 2 or more, or 3 or more beats in value, like 1, 2, 3. It must, unless otherwise indicated, it must expand. You can't say la. It must say la, unless otherwise indicated. Comprende?
He's talking about a natural crescendo.
Okay, lastly, and most importantly, the notes that are off the beat, like 1 and 2 and 3 and, the note that is off the beat must always be accented unless otherwise indicated. Like what? Usually it's done like this: 1 and 2 and 2, but it should be 1 and 2 and 1 and 2 and 1
You got that? Okay.
I have something I just want to add to that. You know, the things that Billy and Cecil were talking about are very, very specific things that you can practice once you have a concept of it. But I think what has to go along with that, and this speaks to, as you were talking about this being a language, I'm getting into this language. I know this is an analogy that's often used, but I can't think of a better one. You know, in the last few years, I've been learning a different language, and you all grew up listening to Spanish and hearing it. As kids, you didn't really have a choice of another language to be immersed in, and that is a very important point when you start trying to learn jazz language, you really have to immerse yourself in the language. It has to be something that's joyful for you to do. It can't be something where you're like, well, I should listen to some jazz now because that's what I should do to get better. It has to be something that you have a desire to seek and to really want to, so that when you have some free time, it's like, what am I gonna do? No, what do I want to do? No, I want to put on some, whatever, a big red record or a jazz record, so that you can really be listening to that language all of the time, just like you did when you were a kid and you were hearing your mom speak Spanish to you or your father. So these things that they're explaining in these very specific techniques, they don't really have to be explained to you because they're in your mind, they're in your head, they're in your soul, because you hear them all the time. And you will find that it will be less of an intellectual study of, okay, has to be, each offbeat has to be accented, and this 3 different types of swells or whatever. You want to be thinking about that, because those types of phrasings will already be in your mind because you've immersed yourself in it. And I think that is probably the biggest advice I could give to anyone who wants to learn a language, whether it be a spoken language, Spanish, English, French, whatever it is, or a musical language.
Oh, no, it sounds like, to me, what he's saying is you have to become jazz. Well, that's an extension of what he's saying. That means the way, you're not just studying jazz and saying, okay, I'm studying this music, I'm studying this, and I'm studying jazz for these 2 hours. He means you have to be jazz all the time. So, I remember playing with Thad Jones and Mel Lewis. It's some I don't know the name of the tune, but he has a tune that goes. Huh? Yeah. Right. I played it a lot of times. I don't remember what it is now, but a lot of the way they accented it was like this. Just the way Cecil was saying about. It's not necessarily overdone, but. I'm exaggerating, but you know what I mean, right? I'm exaggerating, but I'm saying you have to feel it like that. And so when you walk around all day, you have to feel jazz.
Yes.
And be jazz.
You have to feel something. If you're going to before you play this, you must feel something. Feel it within you, and it must find its way out through what we're talking, the techniques we're speaking of.
But just to tack on into that, where do you get that feeling from? You know, before I heard Spanish, and if I saw the word gracias written on a page, I really wouldn't know how to say it the way a native speaker would say it. The only way I would know it is if I heard a native speaker tell me, this is how you say it. And to me, that's all of the records are there for you to hear. It's right there. This is how you do it. This is how you phrase. And if you listen, and if you want to listen, if you want to learn it, then you'll spend your time listening, and all the answers are right there.
Right. So who feels like they're jazz already? Who's living jazz? Yeah, there you go. Okay, so now the fact that he raised his hand means that he is into jazz, and he's going to understand jazz because he wants to live it. So it's just, I mean, it's about immersing yourself in the language, in the music, in the jazz, so that you really hear and live jazz. And that is part of it.
There's a singer, a great jazz singer named John Hendricks, and he said there's one great word for understanding jazz. One great poem, one word poem for understanding jazz, and that word is listen.
You know, it's funny. We're here talking, and we're trying to say something briefly for you to understand it, but there's a lot more behind it. A lot more behind it. Listen, one word, but listen is so involved listening is so involved. Okay, quick lesson. One way to listen quickly is to listen to a group and then just listen to the bass player. Hear everything, but just listen and focus on the bass player. Listen again and just listen to the piano player. Hear everything, but listen to the piano player. You know what I mean? Listen again and just listen to the drummer. So many ways to listen, but once you get into this kind of listening, you can then live a little better in jazz because now you hear each part with everyone else. Most people listen and they just hear the general sound. Okay, that's okay too. The general band, like that. But then, okay, you can break listening down to a real art and listen much more deeply. So tonight, for example, when we play, try listening to just the drummer. Oh, you're gonna hear him anyway, don't worry about it. But listening is an art.
Hi. I was wondering what advices can you give me about comping, harmonically speaking, comping? Yes, as an harmonically speaking.
Okay. Well, I think you definitely have to deal with theory, obviously. It's important to know about, qualities of chords. That's the very basic thing of what we do, is we describe the harmony of what's happening, whatever's composed or whatever the soloist is implying. So definitely immerse yourself in theory, and that again is listening, listening to a great accompanist, compers, and a body of types of tunes, old show tunes, standards, jazz standards. So there's that part. Also, there's a rhythmic component to what we do. So, practice exercises to make your rhythm stronger. Talk to some drummers. Get with some drummers and say, hey, do you have any rhythmic exercises that I could, do to practice and strengthen my sense of rhythm and my sense of time? So those are the two basic foundations as far as comping is concerned. But also, you have to deal with the piano, the instrument, and have a variety of textures that you can provide, and be very conscious of what the range of the chords that you're playing do to the music, how they affect the emotion of how the music feels, or how, or where you are with respect to the soloist, if the soloist is playing high or he's playing low, and being conscious about where you are on the instrument. It's really an exercise of listening, comping, really being proactively listening to what's going on at any given time, whether it's rhythmically and how you fit in with the drums, or the soloist, or harmonically, how you're fitting in with the bassist and what he's playing, or the chord changes that the soloist might be implying. Yeah, those are the main elements that I would give you advice, and to try to focus and practice those things. And I think learning lots of songs is beneficial. A lot of different songs that give you different harmonic problems and how to solve them. And being able to play chords not only in just one range of the instrument, but up there, and yeah, having the ability to play a lot of different textures.
Let me say this about that. Now, when we walk around, we're around each other all the time, and everybody has their own little cube that they're in, and we never say things to each other that we maybe should say, or maybe, I don't know. Like you're around your family, you don't tell your brother or your sister or your mother, I love you. I'm around this guy all the time, and I look at him and I say, oh man, it's Billy Hart, okay. But this cat is great. I mean, this Danny Grissett is one of the best accompanists I've heard, really. I mean, he's modestly telling you something about comping. But that's what I heard about, that's the greatness about him. That's why I said Danny Grissett. He's one of the best accompanist, and you have never heard of him probably. But listen to him accompanying tonight. This is it. He listens. That's something. I mean, really. I mean, I didn't tell you that. But you know. Okay. Maybe you didn't know, but okay. I love you, man. He can really come. He really comes. Listen to this.
Thank you very much.
Hi, I come from a classical background, and I'm really fascinated about jazz, no? And I studied composition, and I wanted to know if you could give me some insight on how to, not really to compose, but how can I, how do you give directions when you are making an arrangement or composing a piece? Because I know that the freedom of jazz is beautiful and it's amazing. And in classical music, you are like, you work every detail and you write everything, and I don't know how to communicate with the jazz improviser, and how to give some indications of mainly what I would like to hear. I don't know if it's right to say it like that. And I don't know if you could.
Well, there's a lot involved there. First of all, there are jazz composers, when it comes to the composition itself, can be that meticulous. We were just talking the other day about looking at a Horace Silver piece, and every bass note was written out for the composition. And when the improvisation happens, then it goes somewhere else. There are jazz composers that are very specific like that. Wayne Shorter can be very specific about that. I mean, sometimes it depends on the surroundings. Wayne Shorter, when he brought something into Miles Davis, those guys, well, here, how about this, and how about that? And he's like, oh, okay, you know. So that part can vary. I've played with musicians that are very, very precise about how the melody is supposed to go, or how a specific drum thing should be within that. I think every composer hears certain things that are very important to them, and some things that they're like, okay, let's see what happens here. There's some guys who just write a few sketches and go, okay, let's see what happens here. I mean, that's the beauty of jazz. I like a lot of the formal composers because of my interest in composition. But of course, if it's jazz, then I like it because it goes away from that, or it's based on that, and the improvisation sections are different. I guess what I would suggest is what I do. I mean, a lot of people compose because that's just what's in their head, and they're able to get from here to here, which doesn't always happen for me. I mean, I can walk down the street and hear something amazing here, but by the time I get home, it's not happening. Or when I get it on paper, it's not what I thought it was going to be. But I think ideally, they're hearing the melody, they're writing it down, hearing chord changes. Sometimes with me, I hear a bass note or a groove, and I kind of sketch something out and go, okay, I know it's going to do this, and I know it's going to do this. And, you know, eventually something will happen here that I can put on paper that will work. So when that's not working, or you're stuck, or you're saying, well, I want to change the style, what I would suggest is a few different things. I would transcribe some tunes you like. You know, just write, you know, check out the chord changes, the bass note, get everything. You get the motion, the harmonic motion, you know, be able to play the tune yourself. Don't look at a book or anything. Just play along with the record so that you understand the tune. And then once you get it and you're playing it yourself, you'll understand more about why you liked it so much. And then maybe try to take it somewhere else, or play another tune. We all steal a little bit when we write. So if you're having one of those days where it's like, oh, you sit at the piano, oh my God, all this stuff is flowing out of you. I mean, that's wonderful, but not every day is gonna be like that. So in those days, maybe, like I said, I really like this tune, sit down and figure it out. You know, and then you have this foundation. And then listen further, see what they do with it once they play the melody. See how the soloists play over it, you know, how they develop the solos and how the whole thing unfolds. Because these days, you know, the music has developed a lot further than, you know, head, solo, head. I mean, there's a lot more developed compositions. There's a lot more people doing things with time changes and different sections, and things get more what would you call it, episodic, you know, they build. So grab the ones you really like, figure them out, and then see, you know, if that opens up your own mind to this kind of way of playing or writing or whatever.
Thank you. And if you are composing, do you, I don't know, maybe you try to compose for one particular player? Is it all right? That you love? No, like, I love how...
I might say it afterwards, but I doubt I started that way. I don't know. Honestly, no, I mean, I don't know. I know there's specific tunes I've either... No, I think it's true. I have to think further back. I don't think my original impetus was ever like, I'm going to write something nice for this guy, because I don't know if I like anybody that much. That's a lot. But once I write something or it unfolds, or when it comes time to get past the basic melody to a solo section, I'll be like, oh, I wrote it for this group, and this guy's the soloist, so, and this is his thing. I mean, I definitely, by the time I bought it into the band to play, I've said, this is for you. Because whatever came out fits that person, you know. But as the beginning thought, I don't know. I couldn't honestly say.
Are you fairly well aware of chord progressions? You know what that is?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Are you understood of what is available within a single scale, within 2 octaves, all the modalities, etc., etc.? Okay. Simply understand that progression, it's about motion from one situation to another. From your perspective, you're going this way, all right? And in the interim between the 2 bar lines, you can probably use some of those progressions that you might know about as, excuse me, as responders to what has happened. And as something that's asking a question, asking permission to go forward into another situation. See, in other words, crossing the bar line, I mean, there's one thing, standing. I mean, a sound can stand, and you can play off that, but the motion is most important, such that now that you've completed the 4 beats of the measure or the 6 beats of the measure, just understand that the final beat of any measure, regardless of its beat count, is always a weak feeling, which means you can modulate. All right. Crossing over the bar line from the last beat of a measure, crossing over the bar line into another situation, you must simply ask permission to do that. And by that, what you do is play some or initiate some sound of the dominant of that chord you're going to. Understand?
Yes.
You're on your 4th beat in D minor, and you want to go to B major. Since that last beat is a weak beat, you can play a 5/7, a dominant chord of F sharp, and take you there. Although that's sort of a distant passage, but you play that sound, and it will receive you. But you just can't go there from D to B. It won't work. Follow what I'm saying?
Yes, sir.
So simply, it's about crossing over the bar line, which gives you motion. Understand me? That's the secret of it. And you can do those things in the interim, in the measure. Within the measure, you could, what Train did that, 2 5s, 2 5s, 2 5s, within the measure. And if you want to go to a similar situation or to a distant harmonic adventure, understand that the 4th beat of this bar is always weak, and if you play the dominant of the chord you're going to, you've got that motion. And while this is happening, you can do all the other alterations. Does that make any sense?
Yes, sir.
And otherwise, also, as you're in motion, remember, you're usually featuring, presenting a series of crescendos, which dynamically are reflections of how you feel about what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Oh, now, just to mess up everything that was said. There are so many ways to compose, man. That's one way. And then other musicians, other people compose different ways. And even he probably composes different ways. I do also. Some of my songs come in a dream. Yeah. So there's just so many different ways. You may come up with your own way. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I think just one last thing just about the composing, because I think your question was about coming from a classical standpoint when things are more planned, so to say. But I think as a composer, it's a good thing, especially when you're approaching the jazz realm, to be willing to be a little more open, you know, and invite the personalities of the people who are going to be interpreting your music. That's, I think, one of the main points I could point out of the difference between the two. And if you find people who interpret your music that you like, you know, it's good to stick with them and maybe use them to kind of develop that openness, you know, because I think as a composer, you know, you can have an idea of what you want, but especially in jazz, you know, that's part of it, is bringing everyone's personality and what their voice and some of their own notes to and interpretations of the composition. So just develop a willingness to be open, you know, and let go of that kind of rigidity.
Thank you so much.
Hey guys, I got a question. I once saw a master class and two of the guys introduced one another, and they introduced him as three different roles as a musician, as a band member, as a composer, and also as a band leader. For each of the three roles, how do you approach each of them throughout your career, and is there some kind of balance that you can approach or manage between those three roles as a musician? That's for all of you.
Okay, one quick thing is that the basic ingredient of jazz or creative music is improvisation. So when you play and improvise, that's your melody, that's your song. Maybe when you're improvising, you might be playing something fast, so you don't hear it as a song. But that is the melody, it's inside you, it's what you improvise. And if I slow it down, it's a beautiful melody. You know, so that's two of the things right there, covered.
Right.
You know?
It can happen more than one at a time, of course.
Right.
But is there some sort of approach that you prefer or pursue as a musician out of the three options that I gave you?
I would prefer just listening to myself and hearing what comes. And then, I mean, it's up to me to just be open to hear the melody, a new song, a new improvisation. Tuning up.
I think the one part he isn't really discussing is the band leader part, and he's a great band leader. Because I think that might be the most difficult equation. I think most good band leaders, I mean, who are probably composers as well, I mean, have a certain vision and look to other people to help them get that vision across. But with that also, it comes responsibility. You have to get those people together. You got to get the gigs. You got to get them to where they're going. You have to do. So that can be a challenge sometimes. But I rarely look at it that way. I mean, the music is the payoff. You know, if you're that kind of band leader and you're like determined, like, you know, I wrote this stuff and these are the guys, I think that can play it and this is what's going to be, you know, if this happens all the way it's supposed to be, this is going to be the penultimate musical expression of what I can do. And if you get that, then you don't really care if somebody's coming late to the lobby or they messed up 6 bars of your tune, or, you know, there's always going to be little, you know, it's life. There are going to be little things that make you want to, but, you know, the airline cancels your flight. You know, I mean, there's stuff, a band leader may have to embrace reality more, and nobody wants to do that. I mean, we live a good life when we get to play music. I mean, we have realities of rent and family and other things, but in a lot of ways, this is an escape too. When we're playing music on stage, and it's what all it should be, I really can't think of much else that will satisfy us. And then you forget about, like, okay, we woke up at 6 in the morning, we took 2 flights and drove 2 hours to get here. One of the flights was delayed, you were planning to take a nap, and now you can't have a nap, and now you're hungry, and, you know, there's things you have to go through as a band leader that don't make it easy all the time. But the music is always the reward. You just have to remind yourself of that maybe sometimes. But with this band, I mean, personally, I couldn't be luckier, you know. And in that moment, when we're playing and it's all that, it's wonderful, you know. When I woke up at 6 o'clock this morning, it wasn't, you know, but this, you know, it makes it worthwhile. I mean, you know, everybody's a trooper, everybody forges through, everybody's been doing this a long time. And we do it because of that moment on the stage where that all comes together. Your music is realized like it never was realized before, you know, just, you know, sometimes you get chills and it's like, whoa, you know, and, you know, that's worth it. So, but yeah, the band leading part, I mean, that can be the most challenging, but, you know, if you have that vision and that drive and you want to make this work, that's what you got to do. I could talk about the fun part, but no, that was just to balance the beautiful part.
Thank you.
I have a question for Billy Hart. Well, first I want to say that it's an honor to have such a fantastic group of musicians. I think only 2 of you have played in Mexico, Billy and both Billy have played in Mexico. Billy with Art Blakey and you with Stan Getz, if I'm not wrong. And that's when I met you. So I want to ask you, what do you think of the actual development of jazz drumming with young drummers from all over the world like Antonio Sanchez?
All right. You're a drummer.
No, I'm pianist.
Oh, whoops. The first rhythm instrument is the heartbeat, right? And that comes even before the first note, which is the voice, right? So over a period of time, that seems to have been forgotten. And we're talking about rhythm as the beginning of life from the beginning of time. So it would seem to me that the most contemporary drummers are the drummers that somehow have discovered the oldest rhythms. It's for contemporary drumming and drummers, the more they can go back to the past, the more they seem to come up with something that society thinks is brand new. It's like going back to the future, right? So of course, at this point, rhythms that of course come from Africa or India, which is the oldest civilizations on the planet, are the biggest investigations. So when you get somebody like Antonio, you know, he's so great at discovering the Afro-Caribbean first and discovering the African proponents of that. So I think of him as a very, very contemporary and interestingly contemporary drummer and composer. And the more that happens, the more people discover more things from the past, and those are the guys that interest me because they become the more contemporary drummers. And I can name a few, but you know, Antonio's is a good enough example. But I could name quite a few more. It seems now, even in contemporary music, in pop music, the biggest influence on contemporary music today is Afro-Caribbean and Indian, the Afro-Caribbean communities and the Indian communities, the combination of the two. And that's because they're so old, they have so much depth and so much meaning in their civilizations. And because they all relate back to Africa one way or the other. Is that enough?
Thank you very much.
Certainly.
Hello.
Here's a little idea to add to that just before you. He's talking about the original rhythms. He started with the heart. And if you look at animals, and it all started in Africa. We all started in Africa. If you look at the animals, you can see some rhythm in the elephant. And Randy Weston explains that often. How the elephant walks, there's a rhythm happening. But it's happening with all the animals, and it's happening with you too. So what happens is the rhythm that you hear inside is going to still reflect a new rhythm, which somebody will call contemporary. For example, everybody knows that, right? Yeah? Okay. So when that came out, everybody said, wow, this is a new rhythm. This is new. Hey man, that was done a long time ago. People were doing 5/4 and 13/4 and all kinds of fours in Africa a long time ago. And by the way, I was working with Max Roach at the time, and he was angry because he had been playing 5/4 and 7/4 long before Take 5. But anyway, no. The rhythms have already been laid down. You can find new ways. You can find new ways to do them, or something. Maybe the melody with that 5/4 made it new or something. But the 5/4 was already happening. The rhythm was already happening before I was born.
Hi. You were talking about composition, about chord progressions and scales. My question is how you get involved in the soul of each tune in particular. I mean, most of the tunes are built with 251, or some tunes have the same chord progressions, but each one has a personality and a mood. How do you squeeze that soul to improvise, or maybe to arrange, or to play, just to play?
I think the playing part just happens. You know, all the work you've put into playing your instrument, what everybody was talking about, what you have within you. What I hear is, you know, especially these days, is a lot of people talk about what is being played instead of how it's being played. And what you're talking about is how it's being played, which is good, because that's what attracts most people to music. But that's what's within people. I remember a few weeks ago, I was just driving in a car, the radio was on, and a Harper Silver tune came in. People know Harper Silver, right? He wrote, you know, a lot of the standard hard bop tunes in the late 50s through the 60s, and listening to this tune, and a trumpet solo comes on, it's Blue Mitchell, which is something I like a lot. And I knew if I had the trumpet in my hand, I could just play right along with it. I could hear every note he was playing. There was nothing particularly complicated about it, but it was the most beautiful thing I ever heard. And it was just, you know, That's important, you know. It was how he played it, not what he played particularly. You know, if this was a tune, and this is what he felt over it. You know, it certainly followed those chord progressions and had perfect bebop voice fitting and all that. But the tone was beautiful and it was so melodic. And like I said, I knew it. You know. So it's really about how you play something. So these guys, I know I can put something in front of them and I'm going to get it, and that's the thing we all as individuals have to work on, how we get in touch with everything we've learned on our instruments, all the technique, all the chords, all the scales, all the complex stuff, and then find a way to express it, that it means something to the people you're playing with and the people you're playing for. I learned that experience working with Freddie Hubbard. I saw Freddie Hubbard play the simplest, most beautiful thing in the world and have 5,000 people in the audience in the palm of his hand, and then turn around and play the most complex thing you ever humanly thought was possible on the trumpet. But he had them already. He had them because he knew how to reach them. And I think a lot of times with music, a lot of the music is that balance between both. I mean, yes, we have an intellect, and these guys have, reached an extremely high level on their instrument, but they also can express themselves in a way that will mean something to all of you. And I think all the best music I've ever heard has elements of both, and it's like kind of a tug of war with each other. It never gets too like in the clouds ethereal, and it never loses its sense of soul and swing and everything else that makes this music great. So, I don't know, did that answer it?
Simply just listen to how you feel and play that. Just listen to how you feel. Especially now that you're inspired, you've said something, you've played something, you've written something down. Respond to that. What I do is, now that I've stated, as a matter of fact, the second composition that we're going to play tonight, called Peacemaker, I wrote that tune in about an hour and 15 minutes. I found a C minor chord that sounded really good to me. First of all, there was an incident that had happened previously. And usually when incidents occur to me, I might run to the piano and try to record that musically. So I felt something, and I found the C minor chord, and then I felt something else. I wanted to respond to that, and I just listened to how I felt and wrote that. And how I felt about responding to that, not thinking of any time, any key signature, anything, just respond, analyze it later. It's about how you feel. What we do, and what we all do, here spontaneously, we do that in a rather expeditious fashion, as we play solos or improvising, supporting people. We're listening to what we're doing as we're going along, responding to what we're doing just from our hearts and soul at the moment. As composer, you have the position to very carefully at the piano or wherever you're, working from, is just listen, just listen real closely to what this says, not what this says, what this says, and just write it down immediately without referring to what you've done in the past. Just write it down, check it out later.
Thank you. Maybe one more quick one, because we gotta actually play a concert soon. Okay.
To Cecil McBee, if God tells you this is your very last song, what will it be and why?
The very last what?
Song.
The last song? God told me that about 2 years ago. I said, I want to keep going, so I'll keep responding and playing music, listening to my heart, and here I am. That's my response to your question.
Thank you.
Muchas gracias a The Cookers, Billy Harper, Billy Hart, David Weiss, Grissett, Cecil, McBee. Como saben, esta noche se presentan y todos ustedes tienen el derecho al 40% de descuento en su boleto. Les pedimos nuevamente que nos ayuden a llenar los formularios, los que no estaban aquí al principio, y reitero que toda la ayuda que nos puedan dar para promocionar estas clases, los conciertos, son más que necesarias en los tiempos difíciles que nos tocan vivir. Muchas gracias y nos vemos en la noche. Hasta luego.